Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Page. Welcome back to Magic Hour, everyone. I am your host, Taylor Page.
And I'm your producer, Claire. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Today, we have on Natalie Miles as our guest, who is an intuitive psychic medium queen. So I thought that I would start the intro out by just telling kind of a funny anecdote about a time my intuition spoke to me and how it didn't work out because I didn't listen. Because I think sometimes we can think about intuition in this way where it's like signs and synchronicities and things like that. But sometimes we don't realize how just literal it is in the present moment of a feeling of a yes or a no. And sometimes we bypass that. And I've told this story on Instagram before, but I also really wanted to tell it on the podcast because it's such a good example, in my opinion, of how intuition works in the day-to-day moments. So Ari and I live on a lake and we have like a little boat, and I was having people over to go on the boat, and I had to like go in and sort of prepare it and get ready. And so as I was walking downstairs to go outside to the dock, I clearly got the message, leave your glasses on the table. Did I listen? No. So I had my glasses on my head and I rationalized with that voice. And I was like, no, it's fine. I'll unzip the door flap. I'll put them on the inside of the boat before I start fiddling with anything, and they'll be safe in the boat, like arguing with that voice. So I go out to the dock. I go to unzip the flap of the front door of the boat, and a wasp flies into my face. I start back and my glasses fly off and into the lake. And to me, I was like, gosh darn it, because I freaking knew. They literally told me, and we can break this down, put your glasses on the table. That is how intuition works. It is present. It is instructional. It is in the second person, put your glasses on the table. And it's not fear-based. It's not saying if you don't put your glasses on the table, they're going to fall into the lake and then this is going to happen and that's going to happen. It is just so clearly giving an instruction. Put your glasses on the table. And I felt so stupid for not listening, but it also felt like an important teaching moment. And I like dove on the dock, like submerged almost half my body in the lake, trying to feel for them and grab them, but they were gone. But like, here's the thing. My mind came in and was like, no, I don't need to do that because I can do this. But my mind also didn't foresee a wasp being on the little zipper thing. And so that's a perfect example of when our intuition says, take this class, meet this person, go this direction. But our mind is like, but I'll never make money doing that, or this will never work out, or that. And it argues against that higher self. And I'm guilty of it as a professional psychic medium. And so I just had to share this story because it was like a perfect encapsulation of this whole process. And it was so simple. And so we don't know what is on the other side the way that our guides do. And when we try to debate that voice, even for something as simple as put your glasses on the table, there's things that we cannot foresee, that our mind could not foresee. And I just felt like this would be a helpful example to share.
I love that. I mean, I hate that you lost those sunglasses.
I know.
But it's so true. And I think, another facet of that too is like when something isn't working in our life and we're getting those signs and those intuitive hits and we feel deep down, we're like, this is a no, but I want it to be a yes so bad. And there are certain things about it that were yes, but I feel that deep voice showing up again and again, like, this is a no. And I think we think that we know everything. I mean, I think on a logical sense, we know we don't. But on another sense, maybe out of scarcity consciousness or worry or fear, we think we have all the information in front of us. And I say it over and over again, like so many beautiful gifts have come into my life that I didn't plan for. A lot of my friendships, like I wasn't like, okay, I'm going to meet this person and they're going to be a super close friend. It's like, no, I was following my joy and this unexpected gift fell into my lap that if I was driving the car, might have avoided that stop. So I think trusting that we don't have all the information and that those intuitive hits and those deeper knowings are there helping us steer towards what is actually in our heart and in our alignment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's such a good way of thinking about it. Like if you were driving the car, you might have driven right past the stop. And so I think letting something co-create with us that is bigger than us and drive the car with us can take us in a direction that's even more beautiful than we could have planned. And that comes down. So I read with the Wisdom of the Hidden Realms deck by Colette Baron Reed. And there's a card in that deck called the Horse King. And it's the fine line between assistance and control. And it basically shows this horse that wants to lead us up the mountain, but we're holding the reins too tightly. And we're trying to steer it left and we're trying to steer it right, but it knows the path and it's trying to take us. And so that horse is our higher self. It's our connection to spirit. It's the part of us that is spirit. And our mind is the person on the back trying to hold the reins, trying to control everything, trying to think of everything. And it's just both things are needed. Our mind is needed. It's a necessary tool. I was thinking about this today. I was like, perfectionism actually does have a place. When the stakes are life or death, like in like brain surgery or things like that, like perfectionism absolutely has a place. Where perfectionism doesn't serve us is when the stakes are not life or death and we're using it as like a torture device for ourselves, but we feel like it's life or death because we're in fight or flight. And so it's like the mind, the ego, perfectionism, those things all, even control, they all have a purpose and a function and a place. But they've been so out of balance in this society and in this world and with everything, with the society, the technology, the way we communicate, just everything has made it what we value. Everything has skewed it. So we have to consciously fill the cup of soul, trust, self-love, power, passion, because that's been so dry for a very, very long time. And so this is the call today, is to just, when you get a clear message, just dare to act on it and see where it takes you, because it might feel like the stakes are really high, but chances are they're not too high. And, you know, you can catch yourself if you fall, but just act on the message and trust the message.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's that balance, right? Of like, it doesn't mean one or the other is right. It's like effort and then flow, like push and then, flow or ease. And so I think we need both. Like all of those things are messengers. The perfectionism is a messenger of like deep desire to do a good job at this thing. And that's beautiful, and then where can we trust that that desire is enough to carry us through and that we'll do a good job because we have that desire.
Exactly. And I think it's beautiful to want to do a good job and for everything like that. And where you need to analyze is saying, is it coming from a place of I'm only worthy if I do a perfect job, or I'm only lovable if I'm perfect? And that's where there's something deeper there. And that perfectionism is your perceived price of love or acceptance, or that perfectionism is a safety blanket to try to what you think will keep you palatable to the world or something like that. So when those things come up, just notice what are the subconscious scripts that are trying to have you holding on to those reins of the horse too tightly, and where are you debating with the horse instead of just letting it lead you?
I'm such a perfectionist, and that really hit. I think it is really tied up in fear of being accepted. And if I don't do it perfectly, I won't be accepted in the tribe, or I won't be loved. I won't be enough to be loved. And I have work to do on letting that go for sure.
I think everyone does. I think to some degree, whether it's perfectionism or control or anxiety, everyone does. And I really think that that's also just been passed down and inherited. And this is a generation of a lot of cycle breaking. And that's really beautiful. And so I want to get into introducing our guest for the week, because we have such a beautiful conversation on tap with her. Natalie Miles, originally from the UK, is an acclaimed psychic medium, channel, writer, and author of her best-selling book, You Are Intuitive, Trust Your Truth, Take Back Your Power. Her popular energy forecasts share the energy of what we face individually and as a collective. They support thousands of people each month. Natalie is here to inspire you to deepen the connection with yourself and the world around you so you can make the aligned, conscious choices in your life. She shares insight and guidance so you can move forward with confidence, trusting your own intuition. I am so excited to share this conversation with you guys. Hope you enjoy. Natalie, welcome to Magic Hour. We are so happy to have you here today.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to chat and see where it goes.
Absolutely. It's interesting because you're somebody who I've been aware of through Expanded Podcast and Almost 30, and I've been on those podcasts myself, and I feel like we've been almost in these like parallel spaces, so I'm so excited to actually converge and connect with you today.
Amazing. I love it. Yeah, I saw that you'd been on both too, and I was like, we need to chat. There's, as you say, it's interesting, kind of similar spheres, and we haven't connected before. So yeah, excited to have this chat with you and finally get to meet.
Me too. So the first question that we like to ask all of our guests is, what is your sun, moon, and rising?
I'm a Leo sun, Virgo rise with a Cancer moon. So yeah, it's my birthday next week. So I'm in my season. I'm in my Leo season. Yeah, I find it interesting because I have Cancer, Leo, Virgo. So I have blocks of the year where it's like those 3-month intense blocks. So I get all of my astrological kind of main planets back to back each year.
I can relate to that because I'm Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn block. So I can really relate to that. And I am the water, fire, earth block as well. But what's really interesting to me for your big three is that your Leo sun, well, first of all, we're recording this on the 8/8 portal. And of course, our guest is a Leo today, of course. But like, the sun rules Leo and the moon rules Cancer. So both of the luminaries in your chart are in their signs of rulership, which gives clear vision. So it makes perfect sense to me that you have this ability to channel and tell the collective what's coming up, because both of your luminaries and your big three are so firmly comfortable with shining outwardly and going intuitively inward and balancing both. So I find that really beautiful. And I always say that Virgo is the sign most associated for me with earth angel energy. And I think Virgo is so connected to purity, service, and I say they're one of the most sensitive signs of the zodiac. Even though they don't get that reputation as one of the most psychic sensitive signs, I really think that they are too.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That land sensitivity, that earthing sensitivity. I think it's that, as you say, I think environment is really big with Virgos and that land energetic connection. So it gets made very clear and very obvious when you're not aligned. But yeah, there's a deep sensitivity. Throw in my Cancer moon and you've got an interesting combination.
I love that combination. I don't know if I've met anyone with that combination. So really interesting. And this is going to be a question that could probably be a full podcast episode for you. But the other question that we like to ask our guests is, how does your intuition speak to you?
Oh gosh, it's just so multisensory. It is, I am my intuition and it is me. There is just such a different, I can't filter it out. It becomes, the way I receive information, whether it is, it's hearing, seeing, knowing, feeling, it's noticing, it's dreams, it's environmental, it's guides, it's voices, it's mediumship. It's just, it just comes in. And I think for me, what I love the most is noticing. I think for me, it's really being perceptive of the themes and the patterns that are happening around you. And I think that sometimes people think that their intuition is always outside of themselves instead of really noticing what is actually happening around them. And I think the more that you plug into the themes and the patterns, you just realize how you're connected to everything around you and activates your intuition.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And with the noticing patterns, there's a reason that our consciousness is directed to notice what we notice. And so, like you said, sometimes when it comes to intuition, it's like looking for a disembodied voice or a crazy synchronicity outside of ourselves or a vision. But sometimes it's just them subtly directing us to notice something. And that's what they want our conscious awareness to take. And so, as soon as you shift to this place of there are no accidents and everything is part of a pattern, and there's so much I want to say about this. I'll start by saying the pattern recognition is so interesting to me because I really believe every intuitive, every psychic, every medium has a slightly different offering to the world. And I think it's so beautiful that you help people find pattern recognition and see the energy upcoming and alchemize with it in their highest potential. And like I say, these tools aren't absolving us of the human experience. It's a life raft helping us to go with a little bit more grace and support. And so noticing the patterns is so special to me because that's what astrology does. Like astrology is pattern recognition through time and space, which is the biggest thing humans want to know is like pattern recognition.
Yeah, completely. It is. It's pattern. Why do I fit? Why do I belong? And the pattern creates safety and security. In the end, it's about safety and security as a human being, or a soul in a human body, and having that safety and security of why you're here and what is your human existence and what's the purpose of it.
Absolutely. And it reminds me, so I post these messages on my Instagram every month for the signs and what they should know for the month based off of energy, not what the planets are doing, just based off of like what I feel. And I put them in sort of quote unquote random patterns, but they're not random. So instead of going from Aries to Pisces, I'll usually do the mutable signs, the cardinal signs, the fixed signs. And someone wrote there, like, I hate how you do these in a random order because it triggers me and I want them all to just be in order. And the message that I got when I read that comment was, just because we can't perceive the order does not mean that it is not there. Just because we do not understand the pattern of energy does not mean that it isn't there. And our angels and guides can see lifetimes of patterns and tapestries of energy that we do not understand and that we do not have the capacity to fully even understand. But the pattern is always there.
Yeah, it's chaos theory. In the end, it's the order in the chaos. It's the order is always in the chaos, even if the human eye can't see it or perceive it. And I think that's why when people are going through massive change and massive transformation and it feels super chaotic and it feels super out of control, yes, it might feel like that in the human experience, but actually it's moving us closer to the path, the mission, the goal, the learning, or whatever it is. And the structure is always there. And we just can't see it, or we're not supposed to see it in that moment.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And as you were saying that, I just got this image of my head of us when we are in alignment with our love and power, like our actions making this pattern of sacred geometry that our angels and guides can see. And it was so beautiful to see that. The other thing I really loved about what you said is that you're so blended with your intuition that it's like a second nature thing where you're like, my intuition and I are one. It's how I live. It's how I go through life. And I think that's so beautiful because you're a testament to somebody who fosters that voice, listens to it, pays attention, cultivates it. And we're in a society where it's not really encouraged and valued. And so it's a harder thing with the proportions skewed to actually get those. But when you are in a fully sacred container where it's skewed the other way, it's actually harder to believe that inner villain voice, that voice of fear and scarcity consciousness, when you're so used to trusting and feeding and working with and listening to your higher self. So I really love how you said that too.
Thanks. It's not always easy. I'll be honest. I think again, it's that misconception that listening and living by intuition is going to make life easier. Or in fact, I think when you really drop in, you can't hide from shit. Like, it's really loud. Like the things that you really wish that you could unsee or unfeel or unknow. And again, it's that, yes, it's amazing, but it also brings up big things where you have to look at it, you have to heal it, you have to face it. So it's this really interesting double-edged sword that it is an invitation to work with your intuition and, live your life by, what the hell yes, what the hell no, and where things sit, but also it brings up other things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's just all part of the duality. It's like finding our power, but also going through dark nights of the soul and phoenix energy to be in that state. And it's like a constant dance.
Always, always. Gotta love the dance. You know, it's part of it all. Yeah, it's special. I wouldn't change it. You know, it's brought me a lot, it's taught me a lot. And it would be, yeah, very strange to think about a life without it in this way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like once you see something, once you experience something, once you step into a version of yourself with it, you can't go back to sleep. And it's just the way that it is. And I definitely have had my own rock bottom, really tough moments in this life. And same as you, I just would not go backwards, no, even though everything I've gone through. So I want to ask a little bit, what was your start to this work? Like, what was the moment where you were like, this is my path? Like, was there sort of a big break moment or a synchronicity or just a way that you came into this path?
I've been psychic as a kid growing up. I used to have crazy dreams. I've always been really intuitive, but never knew that that was a label or a title associated with that. It was only kind of when I was older that I kind of realized that seeing things at the end of your bed, communicating with spirit guides. I connected with my guide when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And then I was really lucky. My mum took me to a psychic circle when I was 16 years old. So I realized I could start sharing messages when I was 16 in the UK. She took me to literally a witch's house in a village in the UK. And she was like, do you want to come to a psychic circle with me? And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Not knowing what to expect. And it was the first time where we did a psychic guided meditation, and I felt this feeling in my body where I felt like it was wild. I still remember the feeling. I had my hands on my legs, but I felt like I was so rooted into the earth, but I felt like I was light as a feather. And my hands, even though they were touching my legs, felt like they'd lifted off my legs and they weren't touching it. And I was like, wow, this is an amazing feeling. This is, you know, what is this? And then later on in the class, we gave messages to each other, and everyone was a lot older than me. And I was like, okay, let's see. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. But I managed to give a message to someone which she could take. And I was like, cool. So that was my first kind of realization that I could give and share messages. Life then took other twists and turns. I worked in film for 10 years. It was always still bubbling in the background. And then I moved to Canada. I lived in Vancouver, and I basically found another psychic circle and started sharing messages again, which led to some mentorship, where a mentor said, you do know you're going to be doing this full time, right? I laughed. And then I was basically let go from my job working in film. They were like, you're not happy, go and discover what makes you happy. They kept offering me really good job roles, job titles, and I was just like, oh, I don't want to do this. My whole body was just screaming at me like, this isn't it. This isn't it. Like you should. And I was like, why? I should be excited by this. These are amazing opportunities. Why am I not excited? So my life folder moment, as I like to call them, came in to basically be like, yeah, go and discover what you love. And the irony was that 6 weeks before, I'd already started my branding for my first sharing messages and stepping into this work. So I'd already kind of preempted that was where it was going, and I just needed the kick to do that. So again, the joys of human resistance and guides being like, this isn't what you're supposed to be doing. So yeah, that's a little bit of the journey condensed. But yeah, that's how I got into doing this. And I just grew a business from my kitchen table in my studio apartment, and just things created momentum and grew really fast. And it was like, it was made very clear and very obvious that this is what I was supposed to be doing.
That's amazing. I love that story. And there's so many synchronicities with your story and my story that I just really resonate with. I started in my studio apartment while I was a waitress. And like you, I never thought I would be doing this. I wanted to work in TV actually as a comedy writer. And so it just is a twist and a turn that you don't expect sometimes.
Oh, I love it. So how are you going to blend this work then? You have to be blending the comedy writing and this. Like, please go and write. You need to write a script to do with this kind of work.
I know. And maybe one day I will. Like, I don't limit myself to just doing one thing in this life. So who knows what will happen?
Good.
Something I'm so struck by is how your mom took you to a psychic development circle. I think that is so cool. And for people listening, I think it can give inspiration for if they have a kid that seems super tapped in or wants to experiment. Like, I really love how your mom did that. And I actually studied at Arthur Findlay College in Stansted last year, and the UK has such a different approach to this work than the US in my experience, where it is a little bit more no nonsense. Like, it's just sort of accepted in those circles where it's like, yes, and you need to have accurate evidence. And it's like, of course we can speak to spirit. It's like not so woo woo, quote unquote, over there. Would you agree?
Okay, so I have had experiences like of North American and UK, and having now being back in the UK, it is more accepted in North America than it is in the UK. If you are in specific circles in the UK, it's there. But what's really interesting, I find, is that we have such a deeply, from a lot of witches and the spiritual and the buildings, the land, it's there and it's around, but it's kind of ignored and it's kind of not as accepted in mainstream as it is in the wellness, spiritual growth that is happening across North America. I would say that the wellness spiritual scene in North America, it crosses the class system, if that makes sense. But the UK spiritual scene in the UK is very middle class, upper middle class. Like it's interesting. That's just my perception in it. It's got a different vibe to it. But I would say talking about the UK is very structured on evidential mediumship, where mediumship is done a certain way. Like, you're not here to give psychic messages. You are not allowed to mix the two. You're here to be a medium. You're not here to blend the two, which I'm the opposite of that. So I don't fit the traditional British medium, which is also really fascinating. So yeah, it is. I think the Brits have a certain way of doing things because we are obsessed with rule and order and structure. I think stuff's getting shaken up, and I think that includes the structure of Arthur Findlay College and mediumship. I think again it's like, okay, yeah, that might have worked for the last 100 years, but that's not how spirit wants to work anymore. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So there's some really interesting shifts and changes going down.
There's a lot of shifts and changes, and I know a lot of tutors from Arthur Findlay College have walked out recently, and I know the Spiritualist Union is sort of going through an election year and an upgrade, and it's all part of just the evolution of consciousness and traditional classic power structures needing to evolve with the times and with everything else. And I will say, when I was there last year, they did allow us to blend psychic messages.
Oh, they did. Oh, that's great. Because I know I heard a lot from a lot of traditional mediums where it's very much like, no, you're just here to give the person's name, give you the images, you're not here to give more.
They're getting a little lighter and more open, and they said you can work mediumship, you can work psychically, you can blend them. So they allowed us to do that. But your perspective is so interesting to me because you've lived and worked in all of these countries. I've only studied, so I was in with witchy people in the UK. So that was my impression of it. And then I was a speaker at Mind, Body, Spirit UK in London this year. And so I'm like, wow, everyone's so open. It's so cool. But those are just the spaces I've been in.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there is a waking up happening in the UK. It's interesting because I always find, like, to be honest with you, I'm like, how on earth, why have I ended up back here? Like, why am I here again? And I do tune in, and there is a part of it that's like, oh no, you're here to root in the energy again of making it accessible, making it approachable, bringing something new to energetically to anchor into the land here. But yeah, it is, as you know, when someone says, so what do you do for a living? You know that you're into, okay, this is either going to be a conversation starter or it's going to be a conversation stopper very quickly, and you're going to get a great gauge on where whoever you're talking to or whatever situation that you're in, where it's going to go.
Absolutely. I'm like, am I going to tell you that I'm a content creator or am I going to tell you I'm a psychic medium? And it's up to me in a split second. It's actually funny you bring that up because the other day I told somebody, because I'm working out of my husband's old office, and I told somebody, oh, yeah, if you wouldn't mind just taking this loud phone call, maybe somewhere else. I'm a psychic medium. I'm about to go into a session. And ever since then, that girl gives me dirty looks. She scowls at me. She'll walk around the corner smiling and talking on the phone, then see me and her face will get dark and she'll like glare at me. And I'm like, oh, okay. Wrong person to have told.
Isn't it funny? I mean, I'm just a consultant. That's normally what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a consultant, or I'm a writer, or, oh, yes, I do podcasting. And it's like, and I think you do end up, well, for me, spirit guide me really loud and clear of when to be really blunt.
Yes. And I think circling back, that's where North America is really supportive, like you were saying, because I really genuinely don't know if I would have had the same start to this path if I wasn't living in LA. Because when I was a waitress, it's like everyone wanted a reading from me. On my breaks, I was doing birth charts with people. My comedy friends like Claire, I gave readings to all of them. Like that is how I practiced. I was around people open and interested. And if I wasn't fostered by that environment, it would have been a lot more difficult, I think.
100%. 100%. I love being in the US. So the funniest stories, I remember going through like a TSA check where you're already at the gate and you're getting onto the plane and they're already checking your passport again and they want to know and they start asking you random questions. This woman checks my passport again, like it's right about to get on the plane. She's like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I've got a queue of like 30 people behind me. And I'm like, I'm a psychic medium. She looks at me, she stops. And she goes, can you give me a message?
I love her.
I was like, if I get it right, do I get to come through? Do I get to get on the plane? Like, what happens? And I just looked at her and I went, you got issues with your house. You're wondering whether you're going to sell your house, right? And she looked at me and she was like, yeah. And I was like, don't worry, it's all going to sort itself out. You've just got to believe that it's actually going to happen. She was like, oh, thank you. I really needed to hear that today. And she let me on the plane. Like, yeah, it is the funniest things like that. And passport checks, like border security guards, they're the funniest when they ask you for what you do for a living. Yeah, it's always been an interesting conversation starter.
For sure. And it's such a common question. It's like the main question people ask you when they just want to get a feel for who you are. And it's like, oh, okay. Do you really want to know? But then sometimes you just meet the sweetest people who are like, I love that. And I'm so into it and I'm interested. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you.
Yeah, I was coming from Vancouver to Seattle. This particular border guard, I saw him behind the desk and I said, oh, I know I'm going to get him. Just know that's where I'm going. And he was like gruff and grumpy and just looked really pissed off with life. I was with my ex. We go up to the desk and we start talking and what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a psychic medium. And he stops and he turns to my partner, my ex, and he goes, oh my God, how do you deal with that every day? Basically saying like, does that mean you don't get to lie? Basically was what he was asking. And I looked at him and I was like, he goes, yeah, he goes, what? So she's always reading your mind or like always knowing everything that you're doing. And I was like, okay, can I just get in the country, please? Can you stamp my passport and let's move on?
More like I'm blessed every day by this beautiful queen's energy. Excuse me.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. I don't know about you, but I do find that when you do introduce yourself, men automatically go, and you can actually see it run through their mind, is, oh my God, does that mean that you're reading my thoughts? And that is such a masculine response to the job. There's an instant of, oh my God, does that mean that you're in my mind? Women, 9 times out of 10, don't have that reaction to it. But men, I would say 80%, 85%, when I say what I do, that's the comment I get back. Does that mean that you're reading my mind?
I absolutely have seen that. And I like where you're going with this because I wanted to ask you this too. And when I was dating, before I met my husband, I'm married now, and my husband is like so supportive of this work. He's so sweet. And that's part of the reason I knew he was meant to be my husband, because before I met him, it was as if the people I dated would have the same response as you, where it's like, oh, like, does that mean you can like know everything about me? And I'm like, I think that their response is different than women because or feminine energy because maybe we have the toolbox more to know ourselves and work on ourselves and see our shadows and work through them, where I feel like masculine energy might not naturally go down that path, and they kind of, in my experience, push things down and don't want to look at them. So it's extra vulnerable if we can see it because they don't even want to see it.
Completely. It's that secrecy, privacy, the secrecy, privacy energy. When I was breaking up with my ex, he said, it's really tough being with someone who sees you.
Yes.
And I think it takes a very particular person to be in relationship with a psychic medium where someone can see you. They know when you're having an off day or when they're not sharing something, or you can see all of their potential or all of who they are, and you can see all the gifts and all the skills and all the love and everything that they have, even if they don't see it in themselves.
Yes.
So again, it's like seeing the beauty and the shadow, but it can be tough for people because they don't necessarily see that as a good thing, because it can be really intimidating.
Yeah, if they can't reach that relationship with themselves, they can never accept us having that. And that goes to anybody in partnership, whether you're a practicing psychic medium or not. It can be a threat for people who have not done the work on themselves to be with someone who can see that. And it's interesting because with my husband, I always tell him, like, you're the best guy I know. I'm so proud of you. It's not easy to be married to me. And I'm always like talking about deep things with you. And he's just the best. And he's actually a Cancer moon as well. So automatically he just has this natural ease with feminine energy. And he's really tapped into his feminine. But really early on in us dating, his grandparents visited me in a dream and told me that he was going to say he loved me and that he loved me. And it was really early on. And I remember his grandpa had these blue eyes, and my husband's family is from Iran, where blue eyes are not like that common. But I just remember their personalities, his piercing blue eyes. And so 3 days later, I was on a road trip with my husband, and he was going to tell me he loved me for the first time, like in the Red Rocks of Sedona. But he told me like 10 minutes into the drive because he couldn't wait. And I was like, I knew that was going to happen because your grandparents told me, and your grandpa had blue eyes, and your grandma was really strict and difficult, but your grandpa was really sweet and gentle. And he just rolls with it. Like, I know not every partner would be able to handle that, but he's not intimidated by it. He's like, I have nothing to hide. Look at my whole phone, feel my energy. Like, I'm an open book. And I think that that is like the biggest green flag ever. And I think for those people with that response of, what can you see? That's a yellow flag. I won't fully condemn it as a red, but it kind of is a red. We'll say orange, where it's like, what are you not being honest about with yourself? And that's something to see if they'll grow with you, or if they stay at the same consciousness point, see that and be so honest with yourself about that.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And I think there's also, from speaking to other intuitives, there can also be, and I'm only talking about from being a woman myself, it can also be that some masculine energy, male energy, takes advantage of it as well. So I found that there is a particular type of man that wants to be with an intuitive. It's interesting. There's like an energy, what's the word I want to use? Siphoning, if that makes sense. In certain, dating certain masculine energies. I've had that myself, where it's been like tapped in. Do you know what I mean? It's been like tapped into and siphoned off in a really negative way, that then shit happens and you're like, oh God, like what am I doing? Yeah, I dated someone for a couple of months last year where that was the case, and having spoken to some other women who were really dialed in, being like, oh yeah, there's some really energetic predators around, that are kind of want to date a spiritual women, but it's done in a really nasty kind of energetic siphoning way, which was an interesting learning curve.
And I see that as a modern day playing out of the witch and the witch hunter. And it's interesting as well because I've also dated someone who was the quote unquote most spiritual. Whereas my husband is like the most spiritual without trying. He's just like doesn't even realize how advanced he is. And that's precious. But like, I've dated this guy who was like so spiritual and read all the books, but it was like from such a narcissistic, weaponized perspective, where I'd be like, my feelings are hurt. He's like, you're hurting your own feelings by doing this. Like, just like twisting everything in this like spiritual bypass way. And I think that's another area, and maybe that's part of what you're talking to as well, is like the men in this space who use it to twist the rules of decency and hide things under spiritual bypassing.
Very much so. Yeah. Hey, and this is like painting a very big paintbrush over all of it, but there's a lot out there where it's like, I'm spiritual means that equals a green flag. And I think actually it doesn't necessarily mean that. And I think women are looking for all that deeper connection. They're looking to have that spiritual bond, that spiritual union. And I think some guys are realizing that by saying that they want it is a way to access that and have it. But again, it's that whole living it is a different thing. Like, you can say you want it, but when you've got it, are you there and willing to show up in that way and be in that energy? I'm still looking for mine. So and for me, I know I'm prepared to wait. That's also what's really big. I'm not willing to be in a relationship where it isn't all of those things that you describe about, you and your relationship, because in the end, I'd rather be single doing my thing than being in the wrong relationship. I have too many friends that I know, people that I speak to, clients that I speak to, who are in the wrong relationship and they know they're in the wrong relationship and are still there. And so I keep, always remind myself, is like, I'd rather be here in this space doing my thing, done that in the past. We've done that learning. We don't need to do that again. And now the deepest surrender of trust of the right person is going to show up at exactly when it's supposed to. And that's how, I just have to keep being me in all the ways and not water yourself down. Anyone that feels like they're watering themselves down in relationship, of how they express themselves, how they show up, their beliefs, viewpoints, speaking up, speaking out, that's been for me, that's been my biggest learning in relationship, familial, love, romantic, in this whole lifetime, is you have a voice, and it's all right to express what you need, what you desire, what's important to you.
What I have to say now is that settling will never be better than choosing yourself. Settling will never be better than choosing yourself. It will never lead to a higher timeline than choosing yourself. And what you were saying before about like having clients that are in the wrong relationships, like I see that all the time. And there's such grass is greener syndrome, because it's so internalized as just being a woman in society that marriage and kids and lived happily ever after is like the goal. And in reality, marriage and kids and happily ever after does not exist. You wake up in that life every day, and sometimes you're with a partner who chooses to love you and honor you and grow with you, and sometimes you're not. But it's like things could happen any day. You could get married and then they die a year later. Like, you just, like, goddess forbid, but you never know what's going to happen. And until you're happy and settled in your truth and your power and your heart and choosing yourself, you will always wish for something else. But once you have that next thing, your ego will just choose the next thing that it wants to be happy. So the practice really is choosing yourself here and now is always going to be the higher choice than settling for something that isn't right. Natalie, I just want to speak to one last thing, going backwards to those like predatory men in the spiritual space. I saw this meme that made me laugh so much, but also made me sad, of this guy having a list of women that he would send texts to at 11:11. And like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, using like angel number text to be like, okay, now they're going to think that their angels want me. Like, the guys are catching on to these things, or even maybe lying about their astrology, or like they know things enough now because it's mainstream. And that's the exact manipulation that we're talking about. And so what I was going to say is watch their actions. Watch their actions. They can quote philosophy. They can say they're spiritual. They can text you at 11:11, but are they kind? Do they care about your feelings? Are they doing the work on themselves? Do they move with integrity? Watch their actions.
Yeah, couldn't say that enough. Yeah, isn't it interesting? Yeah, the 11:11 stuff, or pretending to have interest in something when they actually don't, or they come across that they have a deeper level of knowledge than they actually do. And again, it's that whole, it has to be the living embodiment of it. But yeah, there is a lot of interesting tactical gameplay with it all. So okay, yeah. If he always texts on 1111, be aware.
Yes, exactly. Watch the actions. So I want to pivot now and I want to ask you, because I believe this podcast will be coming out in September, if there's anything you want to speak to the pattern of energy in September that you see or feel, or anything even not about September, but just in general towards the end of 2024 or the fall of 2024, just anything coming up that you feel called to share intuitively about the energy.
Yeah, so the energy forecast theme for 2024 that I channeled through back in December of 2023. So the theme for 2024 is fired up. So it's literally, it's about what lights you up, what stays and what goes. The stuff that doesn't light you up in 2024 is going to be made really loud, really clear, really obvious. And on the flip side of that, obviously, there's light and shadow. So it's also about power games, control, manipulation, power dynamics, abuse of power. So we have a lovely eclipse starting in September, runs through to October. So it's really powerful and potent that we have eclipse season right before the US election. It is deeply potent that is happening right before eclipse season. Of course it is. It's just shaking the ground beneath the feet. And I think the power control games of old guard, new guard, and change, not just in the US, but globally, is going to be really fascinating to see what people are willing to look at. Are they willing to take the rose-tinted glasses off to really see the gameplay that is going to be happening in our collective at the back end of the year? So I think for people individually towards the back end of the year, there's an intensity as we move through to December where it's like, will you make the changes? Will you follow your gifts? Will you trust the death and ending that you need to have so that you can have the beginning that needs to be created? And if you've been resisting that for 2024, I think you might get a very loud and big awakening of that kind of in that September, October energy. It's potent. It's a really big time with all the Pluto shifts going down and the collective. And again, part of that is the fear stuff. Again, it's important for us to remember that you are in your fire and you do have power and you do have choices, even when things around us might be telling us that we don't. The elections is all going to be massively around women's rights. It's going to be huge. It's the women's narrative is going to be really powerful. The women's vote this year is big, and it's really important that women don't get pitted against each other, because that's where this is going. It's again, it's like the masculine's like, do you know what? Let's just let the women fight and let's pit them against each other, because if we water that down, that's better for us in the long run. And I think, women in the US need to, and globally, just see the clever power games that goes with, especially when it's a woman that is, up for the running of being president. So it's going to be really multifaceted.
That's such a good reminder. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's so true. Going back to pattern recognition, which is what we were talking about, it's like the oldest patriarchal PR playbook is still doing the same thing, trying to pit women against each other. When Vance said childless cat lady as a form of insult to me, I was like, that is the most witchy type of insult ever, because cats are a traditional familiar, and childless basically just means not birthing workers for capitalism, which is what a woman's value is to a capitalistic society. And so I'm like, actually, childless cat lady is such a compliment. There's nothing wrong with having children. I might have children one day, but there's also nothing wrong with not having children and choosing yourself and not settling and living your life and following your dreams. And cats are high vibe spiritual beings that are little familiars and healers. I'm like, way to compliment us. We're not going to be shamed by that in 2024 the way maybe we used to be throughout time.
And it's interesting because then on the flip side, the idea of a trad wife and what that is and what that means, again, where there's this pitting against each other of what is better. what is better as a woman to be in a relationship this way, to have children that way, to live a certain lifestyle, and to see the media already at fire with this is just, and it's very subtle. It's very subtle where it doesn't come across as political as such. It comes across that it's just a comment piece, but it is all part of this. Let's make women doubt themselves. Let's make them doubt who they are and what they're about, or pit against, again, that one is better than the other in relationship to who you vote for or who should be in power.
Yes, it's very subtle and it's very subconscious. And this time is also asking us to check our biases as well.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think we forget that the impact that US politics has globally, like it does, it has a big ripple effect. You know, America's always been, you know, the power, the king of power on the board, you know, and there's still always that energetics of the American dream that you guys experience being there and being citizens of America, but also, you know, the ancestors that wanted to move to America for a better life, and people that still do now still see the American dream as like the pinnacle. And so it's interesting, yeah, because that's all up for the crumbling over the next couple of years. Like, what is that, and what does that mean? This election has bigger global impact of, yeah, how the rest of the world shows up politically over the next 4 years.
And it makes sense energetically too, because we're a country made of all countries. So what we would do would affect the ripple of everywhere around the world, because we have everywhere around the world here. And it's interesting too, because, and I'm not 100 on this, maybe you know, that the US election date coincides very closely with Pluto in the final degree of Capricorn, which is America's Pluto return.
Yeah, it goes the day before or something, like it's like November 8th, or it's like Pluto's been in Aquarius all year, and right before the election it switches back and is like, oh no, maybe we won't change, maybe it will be like it always has been. And so that's why that, like, Trump, Kamala, yeah, it's going to be, are we doing things new and different, or are we just going to, yeah, it's going to be fascinating.
Power to the people or power to the structures? And Pluto is dancing between both. And it's so interesting to watch, just knowing the astrology and seeing the energy play out is just so interesting. And then in 2025, all of the outer major planets are switching signs again. So I think 2020 to 2024 is like an energetic chunk of time that is the preparation. It is the getting real. It is the shadow work. It is the death and rebirth, because 2025 is going to be just a completely different world energetically. And so this is like the preparation work for that.
Massively. And the build up to 2026, 2027 energetically. And I think the 2024, again, the election is back into people realizing that they do have impact, they do have choice, they do have again, back to that, like, what was that fired up? Like, in the end, it's down to us. We have the choice. We have the opportunity to vote who's in and who's out. And I think people have become so disillusioned with it all that we've lost focus that we can create that impact. So it's going to be very interesting to see what skews that, or what happens where there has to be such an obvious thing where people are like, well, hang on a second, this is our choice, this is what we want. And again, unfortunately, human consciousness sometimes needs something very loud and in our faces for us to wake up and be like, oh shit, we can make an impact. Oh God, I do have a voice. We do have an impact on this. And I think that's not just in America, that's globally. Like, there is this realization, again, that if we want shit to change, if we're unhappy about the cost of living or whatever it is, then why aren't we doing something about it?
Exactly. We are co-creating with powerlessness, and we're kept so tired. And the message I get over and over is that there will be no power to the people if the people are not in their power. And that is the moment that Pluto in Aquarius is inviting us to. It is power to the people. And so what's happening on an individual micro level is all of these tests and lessons to see, where am I giving my power away, and where do I need to be more powerful in my own life, so that we can be less bullied by fear and news cycles and politicians and scare tactics, but we're so rooted in our power, our intuition, and our truth. And that's a message that I've been getting too, is that we're moving forward. Just like you said, I've been getting this message, and so many people have, about the future needing to come back to feminine principles and balance with that and feminine energy. And we can't do that in a masculine way. The way that femininity moves forward is less linear and structured and trying to push things as far as it goes. And it's more centered and intuitive and cyclical and doing more of this spiral dance instead of a linear one. And so I also think that it's more important and imperative than ever for us to reconnect to our intuition, to say yes to what our heart is asking for, even if it doesn't make logical sense right away, because that is going to be the frequency that empowers us on a micro level for the collective to shift in a more compassionate, spirit-led, feminine heart way.
Yeah, massively. And again, like exactly what you said about we have to learn the lessons about power and boundaries and voice, again, back into those intimate personal relationships or the familial relationships or the friendships, because if we can't do it in those, how on earth are we going to do it on a larger system base? And the fear stuff right now, I know this is coming out in September, but when we're recording this in August, but there was a news article today where Biden has come up as his first interview post saying that he's stepping down, and the line that is on the news in the UK is, well, Trump's going to do something bad with the transfer of power, da 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 da. And I'm like, you guys are already leading with fear. Instead of being hopeful for the future, of trusting that the people will vote what they want, that if they want to vote Kamala in, they will. And instead it's been led with like fear, as in, if you don't vote for her, this is what's going to happen. And I was like, again, it's that part of that like fear news programming that, again, as you say, that's why we need to listen to our intuition. That's why we need to tune in to what's coming through in the news cycles and be like, how does this sit with me and my body? Is this real? Is this fake? And how does my body actually naturally respond to it? And for us to give ourselves permission to be like, this is what I believe. This is my belief. This is what's important to me. Because right now, again, it's that like, yeah, just leading people in fear straight off the bat. It's scary.
Yeah, and that's been a tactic used to control humanity for eons and eons and forever, and we never learn. And no, I'm not speaking that into existence. We are learning, we are waking up, everything's good. Of course we're learning. But yeah, I think that's part of the Pluto and Capricorn vibes too. It's like traditional power structures that are making us scared of each other, making us scared of other people, making us scared of hell, making us scared of whatever. And maybe that's part of what is turning up so loudly. And that's what Trump has done, is he's like exposed the shadows. He is that loud wrecking ball that's like dramatic enough to wake us up, hopefully. And so I think that is part of Pluto and Capricorn. It's like such a cartoonish theatrical depiction of what the power system has always been, that it's distilled down in a way where it's like, can you not see this? And so I think it's like the exact dredging up of the shadows that Pluto and Capricorn is asking, so that we can actually make a new choice as a collective and see things from a more healed perspective and not allow the fear to control us.
Very much so. Yeah, just that as you're talking, it's so interesting that you said like that character cartoon energy as like the picture of Trump at the assassination attempt. Again, it's like that, how what you just described is that image encapsulated. Yeah, it's a powerful time. It really is. It's so, and nothing is set in stone. That's also what's really important for people when they're voting, because I think people get despondent on that it's already made up. Do you know what I mean? That they don't have choice or they don't have power because it's already a done deal. I hate that when I hear that in from people. I'm like, again, no, it's not. The timelines right now are all over the shop. Like everything is on the table currently, and that eclipse energy, build up to November is exactly for that reason, to show people that anything is possible and there are going to be multiple twists and turns along the way. It's not like, everything isn't set in stone.
Yes, and the new country that comes into birth after the Pluto return is done will be in direct proportion to our consciousness as citizens. And so if we believe that we are powerless, that's the new country we'll birth. If we believe we're powerful, that's the new country we'll birth. If we support each other and are kind and compassionate and heart-led, that's the new country we'll birth. And so I think that everywhere around the world, there's a very scary, loud minority that is spreading fear and otherism and hate. But they have to be loud because they are dying, because they are withering up, because the power of love is so much stronger. And is it confident people who are the loudest? No, it's people who feel so threatened, that feel like they're imposters or feel like their day is up or that their way of life is threatened, that feel like they have to be loud and hateful and make a last stand. So just know that that's proving to us that their days are numbered.
Yeah, changing times globally. It's going to be fascinating to witness and be part of in the end. It sounds cheesy and cliche, but we're all here for a reason on this planet. Souls chose to be here at this time. So yeah, we're all part of it. And who do you want to be? How do you want to be in it all? And I think that's the invitation right now is, who do you want to be and how do you want to show up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like you've said too, it's in our romantic relationships, our family relationships, our work relationships. Are we in our power or are we giving it away? And the micro sets the tone for the macro. Natalie, I could talk to you literally all day. I cannot believe it's already been an hour. I could just talk to you forever. Your energy is simultaneously the most calming, grounded, relaxed energy, and then also the most uplifting electric energy at once. I see your guides around you. I'm just really loving your energy.
Thank you.
And you're such a bright light. Thank you so much for coming on Magic Hour. Where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me, my website, Natalie miles.com, Instagram, I am Natalie Miles. Yeah, TikTok, which I've just started growing. Yeah, I do my energy forecasts, which are on Substack, but you'll find those on my website. Yeah, that's where I'm on my podcast. I'm doing a Natalie Miles show. Yeah, sharing energy forecasts. So those are all the main places you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much. And we know this interview will help so, so many people. Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, my loves. This is the section of the podcast that I literally sit with Spirit and our angels and get the messages that will help the listeners and the hummingbird community. Take whatever resonates with you and leave the rest. As I always say each week, resonance is one of our most important spiritual tools in our toolbox to know what is for us and what is not. The first thing I want to talk about is what I said really briefly in the interview with Natalie, which is about that sacred geometry that we make and the patterns of our life that we make sacred geometry with when we're walking in our power and our heart and our alignment. And this was an image that flashed into my mind really briefly during the interview, and I feel called to just elaborate a little bit more on it here because it's such a beautiful idea. And so this is basically our unique dance, our unique pattern, our unique art that our energy makes when we are walking in alignment. And our angels and guides can see it as similarly to the sacred geometry that planets make when they orbit around. It's the sacred geometry that we make when we walk in our power. And the pattern that we create is the exact pattern that then attracts what we're calling in, what we're manifesting, more abundance, love, and power in turn. And so the idea that our actions actually do have a greater pattern to them and that they are creating sacred geometry and that sacred geometry is in alignment with our authentic frequency. And what I always say is that the reason we came to Earth was to explore this slice of consciousness in the most powerful, authentic way. And authenticity is the way we do explore this slice of consciousness. We're not trying to be anybody else. We're not trying to people please or make other people more comfortable. And with Pluto and Aquarius, that's one of the big lessons right now is around authenticity. Aquarius rules authenticity, marching to the beat of your own drum, doing things your own way. And so that is an essential element to us staying in the pattern of power and art and beauty and creation of that sacred geometry. It's like another way to say it is it's a way that we sing our song to the universe, and then we attract things that are in tune and in the same key that we're calling in. So it to me, that visual was really helpful and really beautiful, because when we think about things as big as energy, it can get a little bit too obtuse and difficult to cerebralize. So I love the idea of thinking about our unique brand of sacred geometry and all of the colors and our aura colors weaving into that, just making this beautiful piece of art that is our life and is our energetic output and is our hopes and dreams and is everything that we want to put into the world. And in a way, that's what our soul leaves behind, is this energetic output and the love that we loved, the dreams that we followed, the passion, the heart. That is what we leave behind. And that is our dance, and that is our sacred geometry. So when I started to tune into our angels and guides and what they wanted us to know, I got this feeling of a saturation of energy, a lot of noise, a lot of confusion, and not knowing what to trust or believe. And it's interesting because this idea of truth keeps coming up. And it's like truth on the micro, of course, but also truth on the macro, and sort of not knowing what's real, not knowing what's not, and media literacy and AI and just all of these things. And it's like more imperative than ever for us to root into our truth and root into sacred space of what is true for us, or else we are going to be taken on a wild, wild ride. And I kind of felt this like heaviness over the collective. It almost felt like this like shroud of confusion and heaviness, and maybe even some like grief or heavier emotions. And I just kept getting called to this image of a crossroads, but one of the paths, like, so when I see this image, the image of a crossroads, it's like an X, and one of the lines of the X was a torch. And so I got this image here of like this truth, our light, our fire, like is a torch that will light one of the ways of the crossroads. So it's like there's one direction that's like maybe the harder path, maybe the path less traveled by, maybe the one that requires such brutal honesty with ourselves. Maybe it's one that requires us to heal a witch wound and shine our light more visibly. It's the one that is the harder choice, but the brighter choice is that torch. And then there's a path that is the old paradigm. It's the path that is shrouded and question marks and where the shadows are winning. And basically, going back to that message of truth of your heart, this torch can't light the whole way. We aren't going to know exactly what's going to happen, but it can light the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And that is what we're being called to do right now, is to hold this torch of fire, passion, light, truth, courage, strength, and take one step in the direction of our truth, and another and another and another. And it's a very important crossroads moment. And it feels like it's not just for the individual, but it's for the collective as well. And so with this, I was seeing the symbol of home and family. And when I see that symbol, it can be things within the family. It can be, family dynamics, family relationships coming up, but it can also be a house change, a move, a renovation, a space change. And so I saw those coming up as themes right now to pay attention to, or where there might be some things coming up, and that this might be part of where the torch is leading us. But quite honestly, when I feel into the energy, it feels so layered, and it feels like this moment where it's like everything coming up at once. And so the feeling that I get is like, just take your torch, see the crossroad, choose the path that doesn't extinguish the flames, but fosters them, because the other path feels like it's purposely keeping our head in the sand and co-creating with old patterns. And it's almost like we're in this place now after everything we've gone through since 2020, where even if we wanted to choose that path, I don't think we could anymore. It's like you can't go back to sleep once you've woken up. And that's the sense that I get, is that it's just this moment to really be in your truth. And there is literally a hummingbird flying outside of my window right now as we are recording this. So that's such a synchronicity for the hummingbird community. And the message I get for hummingbird when it comes up in readings as an animal guide is basically not to stay stuck and trapped in one way of being, but to follow your joy, to go from beautiful flower to beautiful flower to beautiful flower without getting bogged down and heavy and over labeled and feeling like you can only show up one way. And that's why I love the synchronicity of this being a hummingbird community, because every single week we flip to new topic, to new topic, to new idea, to interesting thing, to beautiful flower. And I just find that really beautiful. There is one more message here with home and family coming up. The other message here with home and family is that it's not just biological family, but chosen family and soul family, and that this is part of the torch. Is that in this moment when there's a lot of change, a lot of shadow, a lot of confusion, and a lot of layers, community and family is more important than ever to remind you who you are, to hold you up, to band together. And there's this strength in numbers of we're not meant to go through this path alone, and community is more important than ever. Like not being just connected to screens, but being connected to local community as well as family, friends, and just the people that we love. And so in that vein, I actually had a grandfather energy coming through, and he was like so funny to me. He just had this sense of humor and this loud laugh and this just kind of jolly demeanor that was so nice to connect with. And he was showing me that like his favorite time in the world was family barbecues. And it seemed like his house was the house where they would barbecue and where everyone would get together. And I just got this feeling from him of like, that was his best times, when the family was together, when everyone was enjoying, when people were laughing, when they were just enjoying those moments. And it's interesting too, because yeah, he showed me that he was the one to work the grill. And I feel like he had a really specific way of doing that. Interestingly, and I feel like he just shared this evidence so that somebody out there could know who it was for. He showed me that he was a plumber and that he was really good at tinkering with things and fixing pipes and things like that. And then I also saw that when he was, so this is his message. So he was showing me that when he was alone, his thoughts could get really heavy, and that we're not meant to go through things alone, that we are meant to lean on our friends, our family, and our community. And that there were times where he would struggle with undiagnosed mental health things. And it's so interesting because it's often the most vivacious, bright lighted people who you don't know what they're going through behind the scenes. And this felt like the case for him, that it feels like they had kids and family and grandkids and everything on the surface was good, but that when he was on his own, there was some heaviness and some dark thoughts and things like that. And so he was purposely bringing my attention to family gatherings as being really important for this time we're in energetically. It's like we can so focus on working on ourselves and being our best version of self. And we can think that, going back to that dance of joy and truth and authenticity, that only includes ourselves. But actually, it also includes the people we show up for and the people that we love and our relationships. And we can heal just as much through that as any work that we do on our own. And so I just keep coming back to this message of home and family and gatherings and planning things, plan group events, because chances are you're not alone with what you're going through. Chances are that people are here to support you and love you, and that the inner villain voice has so much less power when you are in a group of people that are parroting your heart, not your inner villain voice. And so utilize that, because we can, especially in the States, become such an individualistic society. We can go so long. We can go weeks by ourselves if we wanted to. And so that's the message, that in this time, community is more important than ever. Claire, do you want to add anything?
Oh, this was a beautiful message I, again, needed to hear, and I'm so grateful for it. I particularly liked what you were saying about us creating the unique music that is our soul, our spark, our contribution to this world. I feel like music is such a spiritual thing. Anyway, like I always say, I feel like music exists without us and we sort of tap into it. Like it's another layer of existence. And so I just love thinking of ourselves also as this like creative musical instrument, and what a gift we each are when we can tap into our unique vibration and allow that to be here on this plane of existence. And I know, right now I'm feeling the struggle of it. I'm feeling that shroud like you talked about where it feels kind of heavy. But I think when we can focus in on even the image of the hummingbird, of just following our joy and going from flower to flower, being our most unique vibration, I'm going to take that with me this week.
I love that so much. And I just got full body chills when you said music exists without us. And what just popped into my head is that music is spirit and musicians are the mediums for them. Because I feel like when musicians work, like the music comes to them and almost like a download, or they hear it already, or they know it. It's like they're psychically picking up on the frequency, and music is just frequency and we're just frequency. And so they're bringing that frequency into physical form. And it's so cool because it reminds me, and we're the queens of tangents, so I'm going to try my best, but it reminds me of those like TikTok videos where they put those little machines on mushrooms and stuff and they play music. It's like everything has music, everything has a sound. And so the fact that it exists outside of our perception, but that we can tap into it and bring it forth as a medium is like so beautiful. And the last thing I want to say, and I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast before, is that I got this message about how our higher self has a unique frequency and a song and a note. And when we lower ourselves, when we dim our light, when we give our power away, it makes us go into a different key of being, which then is out of harmony with our unique manifestations and what we're calling in and our soulmate connection and all of those things that exist on our authentic frequency. And when we remember who we are, we play our music to the universe in a way that brings things that harmonize with us. And the message I get is that we are purposely tested by other frequencies and other songs and other notes to see, will you lower yourself to this or will you stay in your unique frequency? And for a time, maybe we will lower ourselves and play a different song and kind of forget our music. But when we remember our music, our authenticity, and our song, that is where the universe can harmonize with us. And that is where we really sing our song of creation that is unique to us.
Wow, that was profound. And I resonate with that so, so deeply. And I feel like I'm just coming out of an experience where I was lowering my frequency. And it's like a visceral feeling where you feel out of discord with yourself. And I think tapping into that and recognizing it is just, I think I'm in that moment where I'm seeing that really clearly and feeling the call to get back into my highest frequency.
I love that. And the beautiful thing is that we don't have to do anything to get into our most authentic frequency other than remember who we are. It's like everything is in us, and like just literally following our joy, standing in our power, remembering who we are, everything will come back into that frequency.
Thank you. I needed that reminder. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so much love to you, Claire. So much love to the hummingbirds. I hope you all have a beautiful, beautiful week. Thank you so, so much for being here. And please make sure to continue to share the podcast, to spread the word about Magic Hour so we can continue to grow. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 166 5-star reviews.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you are magic.